Well, hello there. Welcome to On the Beat, the podcast that uncovers full frontal male nudity in cinema. Thank you for that beautiful music. My name is Laura, and I am joined by my Valentine, Ryan, with a beautiful introduction.
Yeah.
Nice tones.
Sir Valentine. Welcome to the Dark Ages.
Exactly, because that is where our 1985 romantic historical adventure film Flesh and Blood is based, directed by our favorite Paul Verhoeven, and starring Rutger Hauer, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Tom Burlinson, amongst other people. Happy birthday, Tom Burlinson. Valentine's Day is his birthday.
Oh.
Our sweet Stephen.
Good for him for being in this thing.
In this motion picture.
Yes. The story of the lawless lands of Western Europe. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, it's a movie.
The synopsis of this film is: a band of medieval mercenaries take revenge on a noble lord who decides not to pay them by kidnapping the betrothed of the noble's son. As the plague and warfare cut a swath of destruction throughout the land, the mercenaries hole up in a castle and await their fate. The tagline is: betrayed by power, corrupted by love, bound by honor.
Right, okay.
No one has honor.
Yeah.
There is no honor in this story.
Probably the same tagline for the never-ending story. It's yeah. There's no honor among these thieves anyway, but there's also it's the Dark Ages. No one's nice to anyone here. Everyone's a bastard. If anything we've learned is that everyone's a bastard back then. I mean, even now everyone's a bastard. We're all bastards.
We are humankind.
Nasty. Yeah, we're all just nasty people doing nasty things. We just pretend and say we've got laws and stuff to prevent us from doing those nasty things anymore. You know, it's the fucking Dark Ages, Laura.
Okay.
Everyone's a bad bastard, just going around and being bad.
Yeah, I mean, this is a rapey film. Did you know this film was shot by Jan de Bont?
No, I mean, you couldn't tell, but yeah.
They'd been working together since the 70s. He shot Turkish Delight and The Fourth Man, amongst other things.
Yeah, no, I mean that's fine. Because Jan de Bont didn't shoot because he goes from Flesh and Blood to basically doing RoboCop pretty much, and it's a different cinematographer for RoboCop, and also for Total Recall as well. Because Total Recall comes straight after RoboCop too. So
what a beautiful two movies, not including this one.
No, I have problems with this film. Some real problems.
Well, instead of talking about problems, why don't you talk about Paul Verhoeven?
Well, Paul, I don't know, could we refer to him as a problem? He's a problematic character.
Is he?
I think so.
I don't think so. I think he's a good boy.
Okay.
With a dark mind.
So, Paul Verhoeven is a Dutch film director. His films are known for graphic violence, sexual content, and social satire.
Hooray!
I think that sums it up relatively pretty well. If we haven't said this already, Flesh and Blood was his first Hollywood film. So it's his first full English-speaking Hollywood movie, and it's a thing. But let's just get into his filmography. It's quite extensive because he's been making films since the 1950s. Here's a bunch of his shorts. Cups of Coffee from 59, One Lizard Too Many in 1960, Nothing Special in 61, The Hitchhikers in 62, Let's Have a Party in 63, Marine Corps 65, and The Wrestler in 71. Now, this is when we start getting into his features. A lot of these will become very familiar to people. Business is Business from 71, Turkish Delight from 73. I'm gonna fuck this one up. Keet G Tipple from 75. I'm so sorry if that is wrong. Soldier of Orange from 77. Spetters from 1980. All Things Pass in 81. The Fourth Man from 83. Then we have Flesh and Blood in 85, which is our birth year. So maybe
Happy birthday to us.
happy birthday to us. RoboCop from 1987. Total Recall 1990. Basic Instinct 1992. Now think about that. Like those three films in a row.
Amazing.
That's pretty crazy. Unfortunately, then we have Showgirls from 95.
That's not unfortunate. That's a wonderful film.
It is a cult classic. We'll talk about that in a second. Starship Troopers from 97.
Amazing.
Hollow Man from 2000. Black Book from 2006. Tricked from 2012. Elle from 2016. And then Benedetta from 2021. So I think pretty much after Hollow Man, he kind of goes back to his native roots and starts making films back in Europe, which is probably a good idea. Probably, because most of those films that came out after Hollow Man were actually relatively quite decent. The only other kind of tidbit that I have here is that he's one of the few people to accept his own Golden Raspberry Award in person.
Adorable.
Yes,
for Showgirls.
For Showgirls,
Okay.
yes. Aye. And obviously, you know, back in the day, it was torn the fuck apart. But if you get with the right people and you watch Showgirls with an audience now, it's a pretty fun time.
It's wonderful.
It is exactly what it was designed to be. So that is cinema.
Well, Paul Verhoeven called this the worst shoot of his life. The script is partially based on unused material from Verhoeven's debut television series Flores, which also starred Rutger Hauer. That was his debut.
Right.
And
okay.
very similarly set in the early 16th century during the Gelders Wars, which, you know, if you want a history lesson, it's a series of conflicts in the Low Countries between the Duke of Burgundy and Charles, Duke of Gelders.
Right. Okay.
And this is the Flesh and Blood is the last time that Verhoeven and Rutger Hauer worked together.
Yes.
Bummer.
Because he was in Turkish Delight and Soldier of Orange, if I remember correctly.
They worked together 5 or 6 times before.
Yeah.
And Rutger Hauer had just kind of finished working on Blade Runner, and he wanted to start a reputation of playing a good guy, which obviously differed from Verhoeven's intention.
Oh, because there's no good people in this movie at
No.
all, really. Even the women who are being hideously exploited the entire time, I even have my doubts of whether or not they are good people either.
Correct.
It's hard. It's really hard to get your talons into this thing because everyone is so deliberately unlikable. Even the people that you know you're meant to follow, you're just like, fuck, this person's an asshole.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the only reason you like Rutger Hauer is because it's Rutger Hauer. Because he's so incredibly, like, he's cheeky. He's kind of got like a nod and a wink about him in the film as well.
Even when he's raping.
Even...
I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
That was really
it's not-
unpleasant.
It's incredibly unpleasant. It's very uncomfortable. And obviously, you know, it's meant to be. It's not meant to be sexy.
No.
But at the same time, you're kind of just like, it's a lot to take in. It's a lot going on, and you're kind of just like, yeah, there he goes again. There they all go again, basically.
Yeah. Verhoeven, he wanted to portray Martin's character specifically, and most of the character's moral ambiguity. And he wanted to show the
Right.
Middle Ages as a, quote, stinking time in which to live. Because he wanted to distance it from typical medieval fantasy depictions. You know,
Yeah.
he didn't want a sword and sorcery type of thing.
It does make sense. Like, it does make sense to kind of bring it down to slightly more brutal, I guess, like a more honest depiction of what these times would be like. But I think there's another reason why there isn't a lot of depictions like this is because it has to be incredibly unflinching, and you're kind of left watching something where you're just like, oh my god, this is fucking brutal. This is horrendous. And it never really lets up. Like, the film just kind of starts, but it never really stops, and it's effectively unrelenting. And for me, it's like, it's also it doesn't really come down to the violence either. Because if the film was a little bit more violent, and I don't know, I think I'm maybe a little bit more desensitized, I think I probably would enjoy it a little bit more. I find the violence in it to be tame by Verhoeven standards.
Yeah, yeah. I guess if you had a little bit more of that ultra violent, like bloody, gory stuff, because
Yeah.
when that stuff happens, it is a treat,
Yeah.
which is horrible to say, but
'Cause it's not-
it's almost like a reprieve from just
the brutal honesty of
Yeah.
like sexual assault effectively.
Yeah.
And it's like group sexual assault. You know, it's like a gang. There's a gang of them, gang of mercenaries doing horrible fucking stuff. And I mean, I like depictions of like this time. Like I'm interested in media that does this. But you have to be riveted by the story in order for you to kind of get past the fact that a lot of horrible stuff's going on, you know. And I don't know if Flesh and Blood really is that intriguing or that engaging enough for you to be like, oh, I can understand what's going on, you know. It's just not, yeah, it's painfully uninteresting at points. So
Well, Verhoeven did not storyboard the film. He wanted to attempt to achieve a looser visual approach. But there was a lot of delays and disagreements that followed, just kind of due to the improvisational style of how they were filming it. And because they didn't have a good hold on that, a lot of the members of the cast and crew would just like come and go as they pleased and be partying on the beach and stuff. So it was just kind of raucous. And
well, the problem is that kind of translates to how, I mean, I would say it's a little bit banal, like the way it looks. Like it doesn't strike you as anything but yeah, it really borders on, is this a poor kind of like Renaissance fair sort of like medieval like festival cosplay party at points where you're kind of just like you're grasping at straws to be like, does this film look good, or am I just, is it okay because it's like, well, it's Jennifer Jason Leigh and it's Rutger Hauer, so it's obviously there's some money behind it. But I mean, I think that I find the film to be visually kind of banal for the most part. I find it just a little bit visually dry.
okay.
That's what I would say.
I wonder if you should blame Jan for that.
I think if Jan is at the helm of the cinematography for this, I could have put the blame squarely on Verhoeven for the choice of trying to be more loose and fast and stuff with it. Because there has to be, because there's some set pieces in the film, and I mean, there's not enough of them personally, but you can tell from the way that they've tried to do it that I just don't think they've pulled it off particularly well. You know, so it's like this improvisational thing, which also kind of comes back to like everyone has a different accent in the film as well.
It is a
It's something.
country European bonanza.
Yeah, because like you've got someone who's obviously got like a German affect to their voice, who's then acting against someone who's straight out of fucking Brooklyn. And you're just like, whoa, hold on. And then obviously Rutger Hauer's got a very distinctive voice as well. And you're just like, what the fuck is going on?
I know that caused a problem for a lot of people, but it didn't bother me that much.
Well, it's because it's in a time where that wasn't really the square consideration. Like, there's plenty of films that are European. I mean, I would look at like Wrath of God or something like the Werner Herzog movies. If you want something that's a little bit more in keeping with a little bit more reality, then I would say look at those films that he's made, because they're more interesting. This is kind of more meant to be a little bit more digestible to a Western audience. That's why the whole thing's in English, and it's got some recognizable faces in it, and you're like, okay, I guess we'll just mix these accents together and we'll just worry about it later.
as you can imagine, the story that we see on the screen is definitely not the original story that he had in mind that was written.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because when Orion picked up the film, they quickly requested a love interest. There was no Jennifer Jason Leigh character in the film. There was no female lead. There was no romance. This was a medieval adventure epic film.
Right.
So
It needs to make money, so they have to put some. I mean, again, there's maybe too many boobies, and there's even like an odd number of boobies. Like,
that's true.
You'll see like the odd boobie as opposed to like a pair of boobies. Just kind of hanging around. So,
The original story focused on the relationship between Hawkwood and Martin. That was
Okay.
the original story.
that's pretty
And-
cool. Like, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
At the very least, like, I like a rivalry, and
For sure.
they're the two most interesting characters in the entire film. In
Oh
my
yeah,
opinion,
absolutely.
So
Steven sucks.
Steven is the worst. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's like a fucking dumbass inventor, doing dumbass things. He's incredibly unlikable for whatever it is. Just he's
I don't know if
not.
it's his like baby face or
He's just
something.
not
I just like
interesting.
punchable face.
Again, this film.
birthday
this
too,
film
sorry,
does.
bud.
This film kind of borders on having, because you want distinctive uglies in your film that's set in the medieval, like the Dark Ages. Like, you want people to feel distinctive for the time, because no one should be pretty. If they're pretty, then technically it's like, oh no, they're a target. So you're like, here comes Rutger. But the thing is like, it's terribly imbalanced, where it's just like, I want my grey-faced, wrinkly character actors filling up the screen. Like in The Name of the Rose. Like that sort of thing,
Yeah.
where you've got like a bunch, and then it just makes it feel a little bit more authentic. But yeah, he's not interesting. And when he becomes the center of the story, where he's like, oh, I need to save this girl I've met once. This whole thing, you're just like, ugh, like, you're just not interested enough. It's like, I'd rather she just ended up with Rutger Hauer at the end, to
Ew.
be honest.
No.
Well, I mean,
Absolutely
it would make more sense than, sense. It would make more sense.
I disagree because obviously he's a rapist covered in the plague, but the sensible option would just be to go with Steven because he has money
He has,
and he's clean and he's not a rapist.
well, he also makes gadgets.
Yeah. Well, we will I'm sure we'll get into the anachronisms of the film in a bit,
Oh boy.
but Paul Verhoeven did say that because of the change in the film, how now the love triangle is now the main storyline. In retrospect, he said, I think we should have stuck with Hawkwood and Martin. The failure of Flesh and Blood was a lesson for me. Never again compromise on the main storyline of a script. Fair.
That is very good advice to heed.
Absolutely.
I would be interested in what it is, but then it's like, you're just watching a bunch of men do a bunch of horrible fucking things to each other.
Well, now we can watch a bunch of men do a bunch of horrible things to women. Great.
Well, I don't think, well, that's the thing. Like, I think all of that stuff is still in his original story.
Right.
You just don't have like a love interest because he's just focusing on the brutalism of it all. So, then the women are so poorly underrepresented in the film, because I mean, this is Verhoeven to a T. Like, this is what he does. Like, he does this in films. His female characters aren't particularly well represented. They feel exploited, and for the most part, they're there as candy because of the way that he shows the sexuality and the sexual content in his movies. So you shouldn't be coming into a Paul Verhoeven movie thinking, fuck yeah, here we go, the women are going to be represented and they're going to have a voice, because that's not really the case at all.
Well, Jennifer Jason Leigh has defended this film quite a bit, and is vehemently opposed to censorship. Censorship. So, I don't know. She was really excited about this.
That's fine. I mean, she really has to go above and beyond in this film, though. That's the thing. Like, she really has to go. And this film's, we're going to have a lot of conversations when we get to the scene itself, like when we start talking about balance, because
oh my gosh,
the balance is like so skewed in one direction that it's not even funny. But like, it's good. I mean, it's good for her. Like, JJL's she's allowed to defend whatever. I just don't. She's just not an interesting character in this, and you kind of like. You question her like moral judgment, and certainly like when you first meet her, she's incredibly naive and she's very young, and she's effectively like, because you know the way these characters are portrayed in films like this, she's a bargaining piece to, you know, for deals between families and stuff and their money and like how families get richer and all this sort of thing. So you're not exactly blessed with any sense of
autonomy,
respect for
choice.
Yeah, you're just kind of like, oh, here you go. Here's the bargaining piece. You'll love her. It's like it's an arranged marriage already. All this sort of shit, and it's like, okay, and you already know how terrible the father is by this point anyway, because he's double crossed the Mercenaries. And you're just, you're like, okay, well, let's see where this goes, I guess.
Before JJL, as you called her, was cast, two other people were considered for the part. One of them, as always, Natasha Kinski. She's always around.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, they're just like, Natasha will do it.
And Rebecca De Mornay. But Rebecca De Mornay was rejected because she demanded that her boyfriend be cast as Steven, who was at the time Tom Cruise.
Holy shit. Yeah, because, when was Legend? Legend was 84, 85 maybe? Legend?
Yeah, maybe he was busy.
Yeah, he might have been busy, because Blade Runner's 82.
It was 85, so they probably would have been.
They would have
been.
It
was one or the other.
It was either one or the other. Yeah, well, he's better off in Legend, let's be honest. Legend is a little bit more interesting, I think, a project than Flesh and Blood. But, that would have been... what a sight.
I know, right?
Holy shit.
I would rather have had my boyfriend at the time, whoever that was, be playing Martin's role, because that's who she spends all of her time with.
Mm-hmm. I think but then you need a Rutger Hauer style person in that role for that character, I think. Like, because there's a menace about him, but there's also like a kind of weird charm.
Yeah.
And it's like, Rutger Hauer's actually very good at that. Like, he's very good at doing that sort of character. So, yeah, I don't know.
Well.
Yeah, I'm always interested in these differing casting decisions that you always bring up for this thing. And it's just like, I don't know I don't think they would have improved the film. So,
yeah.
I really don't think they would have.
No, I think it's just fine. I mean, massive, absolutely insane cast. It's a huge amount of people.
It's pretty stacked, yeah.
You know, apparently people were just throwing elbows the whole time just to get like a little bit of screen time because there were so many people.
Yeah, and you can kind of tell that they're doing that.
I think they're physically doing it a lot during the film.
Yeah. It's kind of like it's like watching the inside of a frat boy's locker room for like 2 hours. Like it's pretty relentless with just like how much bullshittery you're kind of having to witness. And the women are just as bad, or at least like, and I don't mean this badly, but like all the women in this mercenary group are all effectively prostitutes and whores. That's pretty much it.
I mean, that's kind of what they had to do.
And that's what they had to do, probably to survive.
Yeah. In this group of men?
In this group of very nasty-looking men, yes. Yes. We will get to the positives of stuff that we do like eventually, but it's kind of like... It's like when the very crux of like what you're showing us, and then the story itself doesn't really hold up. It's kind of difficult for it to hold the weight of everything that's going on, and for you to really like either attach yourself to any characters or even really care what's going on. And it just gets a little bit difficult to like handle at a certain point.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, the film basically opens with a title card that just says Western Europe 1501.
Yes, it does.
Which we are calling it a Middle Ages.
This is the best shot in the film.
Oh my goodness.
Easily,
there's some really pretty shots in
easily
the end.
the best shot in the film, because it starts in the clouds, it tilts down, it jibs back, it tracks back. It's this war scene. There's explosions going off, people are dying, and then it frames up with the priest giving the whatever it is, blessing the soldiers before they go into battle, basically. And that's all in one shot. And I think that's pretty good. There should have been more of that, but there wasn't.
That's a shame.
But it all gets better the minute Rutger Hauer comes out fucking rocking a Zweihander, and he's ready just to fucking bust some skulls.
Is this when he's snacking on that Eucharist bread?
What, you mean the blessing?
Like Rutger Hauer comes up and he like gets all the little Eucharist, the body of Christ, out of the bowl, and he's just munching on them.
Yes.
And I do want to point out that this is at least the era that we're meant to be in. 1501 is the start of the Renaissance and kind of the end of the late Middle Ages. This is also the beginning of the second wave of the bubonic plague, because they'd already had one.
Okay.
In the early in the 14th century.
Yeah.
So now we're in the 16th century and we're doing it all over again. So they're already well, I'm sure they don't remember, obviously, but you know that there's stories of the plague, and I'm sure there's a lot of literature that would have been written about it. But they are trying to take back a city that was taken by a coup from the original ruler, Arnolfini.
Is this all real, or is this just stuff you're taking from the story?
This is stuff I'm taking from the story.
Right, okay.
Hawkwood, I believe, is based on an actual person, but the person was only alive in the 1300s.
Okay.
So Hawkwood is also placed out of time.
Okay.
But that's okay. A lot of things are placed out of time.
Yeah, let's not trouble ourselves too much with that.
I'm going to.
Okay. Right,
not by Hawkwood. But Hawkwood's leading the troops to help take back the city. Mm-hmm. And he promises everyone 24 hours of looting if they can help him take the city. And they do, because they love that. Looting, raping, pillaging.
They do love themselves a little bit of violence and rape.
Yeah.
It seems.
And of course, when they succeed, I guess it's Arnolfini decides to kick the troops and the mercenaries out of the city without paying them. Yes,
they made a terrible faux pas.
You can't do that to these crazy people. These people are insane. You can't be like, JK, get the fuck out. Because they're insane and they're going to come back and get you, which is what happens.
Their primary occupation is war.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like, I wouldn't fuck with them. Their primary occupation is war. But the thing is, it's it's stupid.
Okay.
It's stupid.
And the anachronism that I'm going to bring up right now are the cannons that they're using are actually 19th century parrot guns used during the American Civil War.
Boom. Boom.
Quite a bit out of time.
You're fucking up all over the place historically, Paul.
There's quite a few. I mean, one thing they did get right was the statue of St. Martin that they found after they had to flee.
Yeah, they found it in the ground and then they buried the baby.
Yeah.
Because no wonder she fucking gave birth to like a stillbirth or something. She was constantly drinking.
Yeah. Well,
constantly
there wasn't
drinking.
any rules to motherhood back then, I don't think. Not as much as there are today.
It was lawless. But anyway, yes, they did that baby scene. Jesus fucking Christ. It's like, and just there's a shot of Rutger Hauer basically stuffing a rubber mold into like a little barrel, and you're like, what am I watching?
I don't even know what the point of that was. It's the very beginning of the film. And she's pregnant. Why? because you wanted to show that they all have sex with each other. Cool,
Pretty
but you don't really
much.
need to have a stillborn baby in the very beginning of the
you
film
do not, and
that
it's
they
like
never talk about again.
they never talk about it again. He just drops the thing
And
in
then
a
they-
puddle, and it's like, okay.
She just like she shrugs it off, and they continue living their lives.
Pretty much, yeah.
I mean, it's probably par for the course. It's pretty common, I'm sure. But
It might not have been her first child. I mean, one of them had a child, like an actual child. And he obviously bear witness to all of this debauchery as well, and banging his drum and stuff. What a time to be alive. But yeah, no, I found that moment in the film just like, what the fuck? Because it's obviously like, but yeah, it's just a terrible, like, uncomfortable moment because it's like, it's very obviously fake. And it's just kind of, well, it's like, but very fake. It's like rubbery.
like the baby from that American Sniper movie.
Kinda. Yeah, kinda. You know, it's kind of like if Jim Carrey was given it and he would really ham it up a fair amount, like trying to put it in there. It's kind of that bad. But yeah, it's something.
After this, we get to meet Jennifer Jason Leigh, who is I don't know what her birth lineage is, but I know that she's wealthy and she's going to get married to Steven.
Yeah.
And
well, since she's an addition to the original story, her backstory is incredibly like short and uninteresting.
She's dressed well.
She's rich and she's gonna marry Steven. Steven. Don't fight Steven. Fighting is for fools.
And you know her lady in waiting, there is a moment where Jennifer Jason Leigh, or Agnes, sorry, asks her lady in waiting, or her maid servant friend, to go have sex with one of the soldiers that are kind of watching and helping their caravan as they go along. She's really interested in watching her friend have sex with a soldier.
To find out what it's all about.
Right.
And yeah, she kind of comes across a little bit like a spoiled bitch for the most part. And then obviously her less than endearing maid as well. Yeah, it's a weird moment. It's an odd moment.
Do you know who that handmaiden is?
I guess you'll tell me.
Nancy Cartwright, the voice of Bart Simpson.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, fuck. Well, on to bigger, better things, I guess.
The voice of Bart Simpson. You see her boobs in this motion picture. She was also in the Twilight Zone movie.
Okay, well, no, that's fine. That's
where
okay.
Jennifer Jason Leigh's father was murdered. By the way, so weird connection between those two.
That is a very weird connection. Yeah, well, I knew one of us was going to bring up the helicopter moment.
We always have to.
Yeah, we always
Anytime
have to.
we can tangentially relate anything to the Twilight Zone movie.
Yeah, it's like you can't speak about the film without talking about the fact that someone fucking killed them during the course of the making of that movie.
And this is when we have Agnes and Steven meet for the first time, and he finds out that he is betrothed to this girl he didn't realize. He is so annoying. He keeps calling himself like a scientist. He's interested in science, another anachronism. That was not a phrase that was coined until the late 19th century. At best, he would have called himself something like a natural philosopher.
Because when was Da Vinci? Because that's he was kind of like a Da Vinci-esque sort of character.
He mentions Da Vinci in a book that he wrote that wasn't published until 1505.
Oh, dear.
Another anachronism. So he wouldn't even have known that this book existed at this time.
It would, yeah, even at 1505, when it was first published, it would be unlikely for him to even know that book existed either.
It wasn't on the bestseller shelves on the high street in 1501.
Right. Okay. Well, this is when they meet at the foot of a couple of hanged corpses in a tree.
I absolutely love it. It's so
And
disgusting. I love this part.
this bit's actually pretty good.
It looks awesome.
After the drivel that we've just been subjected to, but yeah, she's like digging for the mandrake, which is obviously, if anyone's familiar with their lore, unless you're desperate to talk about it.
Mandrakes are rumored to grow from the dripping fat and blood and semen of hanged men. The ancient Greeks used it as an anesthetic for surgery and an aphrodisiac, steeping the root in wine or vinegar. Mandrake is known as the love apple of the ancients and is associated with the Greek goddess of love, Aphrodite.
Mm-hmm.
There's also that rumor because the roots can look humanoid,
Yeah.
that if you are a human to physically pull it out of the ground, its scream will like drive you mad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's also lore about how men instead would put wax in their ears and then tie a string to the mandrake and tie the other end to a dog.
Okay.
And the dog will pull it out.
Right.
And the man could be far enough away so the screams wouldn't kill him.
Okay. That's cool. Yeah, I always thought them as the underground root baby screaming things from
Harry Potter.
Yes, from cool lore shit. I refer to it as the cummy turnip.
Typically, that's what you called it even yesterday before you rewatched this film.
Pretty much.
Just walking around.
Pretty much.
Talking about the cummy turnip.
He says, when a man is hanged, he comes. That's where your mandrake sprouts, said Stephen.
Thank
you, Stephen.
That is the lore.
Fucking scientist, Stephen. I mean, the minute I start hearing like there's cum anywhere near whatever anything I'm gonna put in my mouth, I'm like, nah, I'm good, thank you. I'll leave it alone. But at least like that scene's cool and interesting because they're they're having a conversation, and it's obviously like the frame is clouded by like a rotting foot or like the central area of whatever's been eating away at this person who's hanging off of the tree, which I find quite interesting for whatever reason.
It's a beautiful juxtaposition between love and death, beginnings and endings.
Cinema.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, she tells him that if they share the root of the mandrake, that they will be in love forever. And they do. He thinks it's silly, but she believes it.
Well, he's a realist, that's the thing. He doesn't believe in fantasy. Because he is grounded in whatever they would call science back then. He likes himself some gadgets. Philosophy, I suppose, yes.
It does go downhill from here pretty quickly because their caravan gets raided by those mercenaries that were wronged.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, Agnes ends up hiding in the carriage. And they steal the carriage, right? That's how she ends up back there.
Yeah. And then obviously what ensues is a horrible gang raping scene.
It's the weirdest gang rape scene you've ever seen because everyone wants to get in there. And she is doing her best to avoid it, obviously.
Yes.
But then Rutger Hauer decides he wants to take her for himself. But the whole group of mercenary pals hold her up in the air as he goes to town whilst standing up.
Well, don't forget, they all spit into his hand.
Oh, yeah. Oh, oh, yeah. Oh, God. Oh, I forgot.
Yeah.
And he's wearing like a glove.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Isn't this the bit as well where like we see the two gay guys and they's like one of them stroking the other one's ear
Adorable.
Like, while this is happening?
Those are the only two characters in the film that remain loyal to each other. This is those two men that are in a relationship. One with a New York accent.
Yeah. No, we'll get to that moment where he starts talking because holy mother of Christ, it's so fucking weird.
Also disgusting during this particular scene where all the women are. When they find Agnes, all the women are just screaming, "Rape her!
Yeah.
Rape her!"
Well, again, I feel
darling.
like it's part of like this indoctrination, like procedure where that's how these women have ended up into this group anyway, and that's just it. Like they're indoctrinated, and they've been. What is it where you start to fall in love with your abuser?
Stockholm syndrome.
It's basically that, It's like it's a
It's a
survival
means
thing.
of survival. That's exactly it. It's a
Yeah.
way to survive, which is why when Rutger Hauer ends up getting her on the ground and he's doing the rape, she's like, "You're never going to hurt me. I like this." And it's just a defense mechanism against the pain and the trauma that she's ensuing. And there's a point where she kind of wraps her legs around his backside. And all the girls are like, "Oh, look, Martin's getting raped."
Yeah.
Horrible. But
It's
there was some kind of backlash about that scene after the movie came out because
You don't
people are
say.
going, you're depicting someone enjoying being raped. And he's like, that's obviously not what was going on. That's not the point. The point is that
It's like a power struggle.
I'm putting words into his mouth, but
Yeah, pretty much.
from my perspective, she is just trying to defend herself.
Yeah.
You see that in movies. There's a scene in the Outlander show where this guy throughout the whole series is always trying to rape somebody. And a defense mechanism that one of the women uses is to just laugh at him and mock him. And she got away with it.
Yeah.
Women will, I don't know, needs must.
Yes. Let's move away from the raping for a second.
I'm not going to move too far away. Hold on. I have one more thing to say. So
Okay,
Jennifer
Jesus.
Jason Leigh has said that she hates censorship of any sort. She said Flesh and Blood is a very violent film, but they not only cut some of the rape scene, but they also had to lose some of the lovemaking scene. She said, "I find it so odd that it's all right to show people being blown to pieces, but not making love." And she said, "It's a hard scene to watch, brutal and ugly as rape is. I know it's going to upset a lot of people, but the film is extraordinary. Paul Verhoeven is so gifted." That's what she said.
Yeah, I mean,
He called her like a trooper, the stuff that she had to go through. Like, because that scene was set at night, it couldn't be a closed set and it was outside. So there's just tons of lights and tons of crew. And it was a very open and probably quite raw experience for her that day, that night.
yeah.
So
Her character development is interesting during the course of the film because she just kind of goes from one horrible man to another horrible man in
yeah.
just a string of horrible men instances that just kind of it's rough, and I just wanted to move away from this because it is the least interesting parts of the film is all the brutalism.
Well,
all the raping is so unfucking interesting.
yeah, it's disgusting.
Yeah.
The mercenaries take a castle.
They
And
do.
The castle hasn't been infected by the plague at this point, right? Like, it's just a
Well-
castle and they kind of get rid of all the people? Or was there plague in the castle?
This is where I start to have some issues because they're obviously, because remember, there's the mother or the maid who takes the child
Yeah.
and jumps off the ramparts. They're like, no, we'll keep it. And then she just jumps off the ramparts and kills herself. That child had the plague. So there would have been sheets, there would have been instances where she would have been infecting people in the castle at this point because that's how the plague would have worked. The fact is that by the child leaving, seemingly for whatever reason, they have completely eradicated the plague because, like, they must be still sleeping in that bed that she was in.
Well, also, yeah, the whole place would have been infected because if
Would have been
one
riddled.
person had the plague in there, you know, there's still rats, there's still fleas,
Yeah.
there's still the carrier
Yeah.
that would have been around.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's just not. It's just yeah, because by the time you get to this point, you're kind of just like, well, okay, a lot of this doesn't really make sense. Then maybe I can just like have a suspension of disbelief and just enjoy it for what it is. And you're like, well,
It does get kind of fun at this point, though.
it does. Yeah,
When you have, like, the final siege.
when shit starts to get real, then yeah, when it starts to get really silly, you just kind of wish, I wish most of it was silly before we get to this point.
Right.
Because it's obvious that he's taking the piss at this point, where it's just kind of like, it just had to be sillier. And I don't have an issue with, if you kind of completely forget about the fact that, like, the child had the plague and then Hawkwood ends up getting the plague in the most disgusting fucking way possible.
Some juicy...
Oh, God, he, like, bursts a boil on her back that's on his hand, and then he wipes it on his face.
It's a bubo.
Like,
they're called buboes.
You're like,
he
what?
wipes a popped bubo juice all over his face.
It's like, it is a moment in the film where I'm fucking flabbergasted that it happens. But I'm glad it does, because it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, like, a dog ends up getting the plague from drinking the blood that they've been
doing bloodletting
on him, and the dogs drank it. Would the plague kill the dog? Or would he just carry the plague?
These are questions I wish you would have asked me earlier. I would have researched.
Because that's something that kind of came to my mind, where I'm just like, why would the dog die of the plague? He would be carrying the plague. Because it'd be the same as if, like, if the dog is able to get the plague and die, then why wouldn't rats who were carriers of the plague also get the plague and die? It doesn't really make any sense to me. I think it's just a visual thing. But,
okay, so from the internet...
Right.
Dogs are inherently resistant to the plague-causing bacteria. Dogs that do become infected with the plague are less likely to show signs of illness than infected cats. But they would get the same type of same type of symptoms.
Okay.
That dog must have just been a special case. Where the dog drank the plague blood.
He was a movie dog. So... yeah, I mean, he was a movie dog. Anyway, it doesn't make any sense, but they cut this little dog up into pieces. And this is the thing that I like about this film. Not that moment, but I like what they do is, like, well, Hawkwood does is, like, his final revenge, because he's effectively dying, right? Although he seems perfectly fine by the end of the film, which is weird, is they start catapulting bits of plague dog into the castle after, because they've tried to siege it and they've blown up the Trojan horse tank thing that they built, that Stephen built, and it was pretty crap. Let's not lie.
Yeah,
it was
sucked.
Pretty shit. And they blow it up, and that's cool. I like explosions
for sure.
And then they throw bits of the infected dog meat into the castle.
Yes. Pretty rad.
This is interesting. I mean, I know you and me don't really like dog deaths too much.
No, I was very sad about that sweet plague puppy.
But, like, it's not as bad as, like, in Fear, where the fucking dog head comes through the
because you got to know that dog. That dog was a friend of the family.
You really did get to see that dog.
We just met this dog.
Yeah, and that's when you know Marky Mark ain't fucking around if he's chopping the fucking heads off of dogs. That is fucked up, that movie. It's actually very good.
Love that movie.
It's better than this one. But they are throwing the meat into the place. Stephen had been captured because he's got a dog collar on. Stephen's been captured, and they've been shooting arrows at him and slashing him and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, so that was kind of the big interruption of the torture of Stephen, was the dog flesh flying in from a catapult.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So everyone in the castle is realizing, yo, that's a plague pup.
Mm-hmm.
Plague flesh is swinging in like crazy, raining from the skies.
Yes.
So they take all of their clothes off and burn them to try and avoid getting infected.
You have to burn the dog meat, and we have to burn our clothing in order for us to and this is the dick scene. This is where we're getting to it.
1 hour, 36 minutes, and 45 seconds is this dick scene. And the gay couple that we'd mentioned a little bit earlier, the one half of the couple has the New York accent. So he's kind of on the right side of the screen, and he goes to burn his clothes, and he is the only one that's naked.
Everybody only one else out of seems everyone to have like some kind of underwear on, and it's weird. It looks odd as fuck.
Another anachronism, because Rutger Hauer also walks into frame wearing like a linen thong, like a codpiece / thong.
Yeah.
And linen thongs were not a hot item of undergarment during this period.
Also, if you're trying to get rid of the plague, you get rid of every single item of clothing. I don't understand why they're still wearing clothes. That's when you have that weird drunken bitch going around. She's got that one titty that's flopping out, but she's still wearing clothes.
The underwear they
It
might have
doesn't
been
make
wearing
sense.
were called brays. Basically, they're like linen shorts or breeches. They're basically shorts that they would wear under their clothes if they wanted to. So yeah, no, they wouldn't have been wearing underwear like that. So it was basically just a wiener cover up for Rutger Hauer.
It's a moment where there's been so much nakedness to this point, like so much on the women's side, obviously.
Every single man should have, every single person in that crew
should have been completely naked.
Absolutely. Because you would have been like, I'm gonna die. I'm going to die. I have to. If this is going to save me, who cares? They've been running around raping each other anyway.
They've all seen each other's dicks. Like, they've all seen each other's boobs. Like, everything's
that they weren't
happening.
taking their clothes off.
Yeah.
Absolutely wild.
And there's literally...
Why is there just one?
Well, there's not even a moment where the women have a moment to keep their clothes on, because the men are just like, oh, I'm going to suck on those boobs. And like that happens no more than like 5 or 6 times over the course of the movie.
Yes.
And you're just kind of like, Jesus fucking Christ. But yeah, like, it's such a weird moment, and it kind of just doesn't make any logical sense. Like, it doesn't make any logical sense.
If you are stripping down and burning your clothes in order to save your own life, you're not holding on to any sense of dignity.
No.
You want to survive.
No.
So no, none of them would have been wearing clothes. It's very strange. And they would have
stupid.
You would have wrapped up the end of the movie, everyone running around naked. It would have been awesome.
Yeah, pretty much. Or, I mean, eventually they could have put new clothes on. Like, I don't see that being a problem. Thing is, like, they could have gone through a whole sterilization process, which they didn't really do. They could have just all taken their clothes off. There was a bath they could have used. There was all sorts of different things. But, like, the shot itself, it's off the fire. It's relatively quite wide. And you just see sad little Brooklyn boy kind of off on the side. And it's like... he looks as though a joke has been played on him. He looks as though, well, why am I the only one that's naked and everyone else still has their clothes on? That's what it looks like. And it looks odd as fuck. Like, it just looks weird. And obviously, just before this moment, you hear him in a really thick New Yorker accent go, "There's plague here, you idiot."
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, Jesus Christ. And like, this is
so
when,
good.
well, he starts talking more for the last kind of portion of the movie. Then you start to notice, like, oh my God, everyone has a completely different accent.
Yeah, his is definitely the most stark out of everybody.
Oh, Jesus fucking Christ. It is very, very, very interesting.
We have to mention the hyper fast bubonic plague that we have, because people are getting sick left, right, and center. A bit of the plaguey dog flesh went into the well.
Well, Stephen put it in the well.
Oh, right.
And then he basically gives an ultimatum to JJL and was like, look, this is your choice to be, to figure out whose side you're on. And it's like, you have to watch them all drink the water. Yet she saves Rutger Hauer from it. But some of them get the plague within less than a day. And they're
minutes.
They're dead within a day. And you're like, whoa, super plague. It's, it's kind of... Yeah, I mean, I'm like, oh, it's kind of unrealistic, but I'm like, this is also a point where we've already seen the lightning strike dog collar moment,
right?
Where you're just like, okay, that's something. Like, it's maybe the best moment in the entire fucking movie, because you're like, Jesus fucking Christ, that was crazy, and I loved it.
Yeah, Verhoeven said that was the one part of the film that kind of is the biggest stretch of the imagination. that particular part.
It's
I wanna
fucking
go-
crazy.
I want to go back to the plague, though. So,
Of course.
symptoms of the bubonic plague would typically show between 1 to 7 days. And this is a hyper fast version. Those infected with the plague, they get a fever, headache, chills, weakness, and swollen, painful lymph nodes, and they call them buboes, in the groin, neck, and armpits, which later secreted pus and blood.
Nice.
The bubonic plague has not been eradicated in our world to this day. There are roughly 7 cases every year, but it can be treated with antibiotics.
Yeah.
So you are safe.
Antibiotics?
Antibiotics. I slurred.
Antibiotics.
Antibiotics.
Yes. Antibiotics. Yeah. It's this is some plague they got going on here. But there's a final battle, and everyone falls in love.
Totally.
Who's expecting to fall in love because that's how it was written. And Rutger Hauer survives the whole ordeal.
For Flesh and Blood 2.
For Flesh and Blood 2. The film that thankfully never came.
R.I.P. Rutger Hauer.
Rutger Hauer's R.I.P.?
Yeah, isn't he?
Is he? I don't think so. Is he?
I'm pretty sure he has perished.
He is immortal.
He perished in 2019.
Holy shit. Yeah, that's a
July
shame.
19th.
Well, yeah, sorry. He's one of my favorites, Rutger Hauer. Love Rutger Hauer.
I have one more little bit of information that I think you might be interested in.
I hope so.
The movie inspired Berserk creator Kentaro Miura.
Yeah, makes sense.
That he based the design of the character Guts on Rutger Hauer's character Martin.
Makes sense. This is pretty much the opening of the story for the Golden Age arc, is watching the beginning of Berserk, pretty much. About a band of mercenaries. Plus, Berserk is full of rape, even child rape, all sorts of rape. So, yes.
Jesus.
Oh, it's fucking horrible. I like Berserk. Like, I really like Berserk. But at the same time, you're like, all right, here we go. Also, Kentaro Miura has also passed away.
Yeah, he passed away recently, didn't he?
Yeah, within the last couple of years, and people were infuriated. They were like,
he
how dare you
finish
die before you finish your book?
2021.
Well, yeah, pretty much, yeah. So there's people, he had apprentices and stuff. They're still churning out chapters to this day based on the notes that he had. So, you'll see a finality to that book eventually. People need to see the conclusion of the rivalry between Guts and Griffith, and I'm sure it will come.
Wonderful.
I'm sure it will come.
You mentioned at the start about the budget. You were maybe curious about the production budget.
Yes, you know what? That was my first question.
$6.5 million budget. And it went over budget. Guess how much it made in the box office?
Probably less than 2.
$100,000. They did not know how to market this film. They didn't know what to do. It was cut.
It's such an anomaly.
It opened in New York and LA. And then now has gained a sort of cult following.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, it's unpopular for very specific reasons. That's not
he initially blamed it on the fact that he had to cut it so much to appease the studios. But then you watch it now, which is uncut, the version that you can get. And
is that the version we watched?
Yeah, because it's been remastered, redone, recut.
Reconstituted. It's still not good. I'm sorry, dude. It's still not good. Still not great.
One more thing. The film was originally titled God's Own Butchers.
Much better, but it's a little on the nose.
Flesh and Blood's pretty good.
Flesh and Blood's good, but God's Own Butchers is a little on the nose, I think.
When it came out on VHS, it was called The Rose and the Sword.
Doesn't make sense.
Nope.
All right. Cool.
Would you like to do your ratings now, sir? Would you like to go ahead and start?
Yeah. Let's do the scene itself.
Visibility and context.
2. It's just not good. It's not a good moment. It begs way too many questions, especially for someone who's like a history freak like yourself. Like there's too many things going on and it makes no logical sense. And you're just like, it's like, yeah, at this point, I'd rather it wasn't there. I mean, we wouldn't be covering on the podcast. I mean, that's also another reason why I wish it wasn't there. But it's like, there's no logical sense for it to be the way that it is. It kind of just doesn't make any sense to me. So it just ends up being a 2 because, yeah, you get to see something, but it's just like, you question it too much. Also, the balance in this film's like it's so skewed that you're just like, there just had to be, it had to go all the way or not at all. And at that point, if it doesn't go there at all, then basically the film is just a complete and utter waste of your time. So, I know I think I'm being super harsh on it, and I think my film rating will be a little bit more forgiving than some of the things I've said, but there's stuff in it that I like. Like, I like depictions of this period because of how lawless it is and how fucked up people behave, and it's like we still haven't really gotten a good film about like the Crusades either, unless you count like the Seventh Seal, which is a slightly different thing. It like just stuff like this is fucking interesting, and if you do it really, really well on the screen, and you do it, you do it properly, then I think it's super fucking interesting. Because I didn't hate Kingdom of Heaven, but you have to watch the 4.5 hour cut of that movie in order to get any semblance of interest out of it. So yeah, it's like I'm interested in the film itself, and I'm interested in this. It feels to me they weren't able to take it as far as they could take it, and it's just painfully uninteresting and kind of visually banal. So yeah.
Okay, I'm going to give the visibility and context a 2.5. It lends a little bit more to help the balance, but the balance is, like you were saying, so completely off kilter that one penis is not going to save that fact. There are boobs flying everywhere. There's full frontal and rear female nudity in this film. Like I don't even know if you barely see a man's butt in this movie.
You see like
Rutger Hauer's butt.
Yeah, if you stop and check, you can see some vagina.
Oh, absolutely.
There's
more than once.
There's that poor nun that Hawkwood fucking dunts in the head.
Yes.
And he's like, "What did you do?" He's like, "I hit her. I almost killed her by mistake, sir." And she obviously is effectively Hawkwood retards her. And he's like kidnaps her and then has her on the farm. And like no one questions anything. They're just like, "Oh, how's your plaything nun that you stole?" And she's obviously like, yeah, she's been mentally stunted because she had that horrific head wound, and she's still there planting vegetables. And you're like, okay.
Right. Yes. Her nudity, JJL's nudity, nudity.
Yeah, no, hold on. We need, like, because now that I'm thinking about it, where is she now? Because he's got the fucking plague. Is she just on the farm still?
Yeah, just probably knocking her busted head against a wall.
Just planting planting vegetables?
Probably happy to have him gone.
Oh,
because they said that they were married. And I'm like they were together.
No.
Yeah, they were together. Yes.
Oh, boy.
So pretty sure he's having sex with that woman who can't even speak.
She can't even speak because she's fucking literally had this horrific fucking head wound. He just, like, literally lobotomized her.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my God.
That's love, baby.
I mean, if that's the way it's meant to go.
Okay, so we've got a horrible imbalance between a full female nudity and just a little touch of frontal male nudity. When that fire scene, as we've already explained, I believe should have got every single person should have been naked in a way to survive. Like, this is a survival tactic.
The scene itself should have had a lot more weight to it, because I feel like it's a little too casual for what it is.
It is casual because
weird.
You're absolutely terrified. Like, the plague is happening, everyone's freaked out. You know what happens next.
Yeah.
There's a 60 to 90% rate of death. So you're going to die.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, no, it should have gone a lot farther. It should have been heavier. Everyone should have been naked. It should have been a fiasco. And it just seems like, was that part of the cuts that happened? Or was it that's just no one felt like getting naked? It was in their contracts. I'm not sure, but it just seems wrong that we didn't have more nudity on the male side to balance it out a bit. So,
yeah.
I'll just toss you my film rating. I gave it a 3. I gave it a 3 when I first saw it, and I gave it a 3 again. I'm kind of with you. I like this type of movie. You know, I do have a minor in medieval and Renaissance studies.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And I like watching these kind of depictions. I love pointing out anachronisms and just seeing what they got right, what they got wrong. And this one's a fucking mess. But it's not a fun film. It's pretty disgusting. But there's a couple things to like, and most of the things are Rutger Hauer and Mandrakes.
Yeah.
So you can go ahead. I don't know. We've talked about it for an hour.
I think we've talked about it at like length, but yeah, I do like, there is part of me. I gave it 3.5 originally because of the lightning strike thing.
Yeah.
Because of how stupid it is.
Yeah.
It probably deserves more of a 3 or like a 2.5, because it's like, what is the film meant to be? Like, who's it marketed to? Like, what's it for? And I find it kind of troubling and puzzling all at the same time. Because you're just like, it's really, like, it's a very difficult thing, I think, to market in 1985. And it's like, here's this brutal medieval story that has no love in it whatsoever, and everyone's an asshole. It's like, okay.
It's just here to pave the way for Willow.
Or Krull. Yeah, fucking Krull.
Yeah.
The thing is like, it has to be this film, but there has to be an injection of something else into it, which is kind of one of the reasons why I like Berserk an awful lot, is that it's very traditional, Dark Ages, fantasy, but then there's demons and stuff in it, and that shit's fucking interesting.
Well, that's not what he wanted to do here, okay? So
well,
you stick with your Berserk.
Should have. He fucking should have. And there's not enough of a guy running around wielding a fucking giant sword either.
That's true.
But unfortunately, there's a lot of everything else, i.e. the R word, just being bandied around like fucking crazy. Let's just say I'll give it 3. I think is probably the best thing. I give it 3.5 for the lightning thing, but that's because I'm a fucking juvenile. So yeah, it's nothing I ever really want to watch again. And we've watched it twice now.
I'm so glad we own it.
And I'm like, oh, yeah. Well, we have the version of it which we'll never have to update ever again.
That's right.
And it's basically there for people to borrow. That's why we own it now.
That's
so.
why.
Mm-hmm.
Well, goodness gracious. Thank you, my Valentine, Ryan.
Date night movie.
That's why I picked it.
Lift her up. Lift her up.
I picked it because it's Verhoeven's most romantic film.
Yeah, I thought, darling, I would just bring the boys round.
Oh my God. Coming to you from Western Europe, 1501. I have been Laura.
Coming to you, turnip.
Gross.
Yes, the cummy turnip. Yeah, let's wrap this up. I need to go to work.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Ugh.